Hi everyone. Earlier on this week I did a video on why I think Paul McCartney should not headline the Glastonbury Festival in 2020. And I didn't get savaged as much as I thought I might do in the comments. I've kind of got away with it a little bit. But I've got some ideas, hopefully in a more positive light, about specific things that could happen to make this a success. I'm thinking of two specific areas where he can make this a success for the TV viewing audience at home, which is what I was talking about in that first video. And I'm going to go through both of those. So the first one relates to the guest stars that he could pull in to his Glastonbury slot. Glastonbury loves a headliner guest star, and I think Paul has the opportunity to show that he is somebody who can pull in a bigger set of guest stars than anybody's ever been able to manage before. And that would be a good way to show people who maybe aren't necessarily fans of Paul McCartney just how big a star he is. So the first thing that he could do, and I think it's a possibility, is to bring in Kanye West and Rihanna to do 4 or 5 seconds, their hit from a few years ago. And I understand that Kanye and Rihanna won't be everybody's cup of tea, and not mine, to be honest, but I think it does send out a statement. I think he probably could get those there. I think Kanye would love the opportunity with his ego to walk on that stage as a surprise and sort of just take in the crowd's reaction that he would get. And if people see Paul bringing in stars of that calibre, it'll maybe make them think about just sort of how big he is, because how many people could get them to come and guest star with him. So I think that's probably a possibility, and it would generate loads and loads of headlines around the world if he did that. So I certainly wouldn't rule that out. The other thing that, well, I certainly don't think will happen, before anybody mentions this, it's not going to be Sean and Julian covering for John, Danny Harrison covering for George, and with Ringo on drums. Just forget it. It's not going to happen. It's been talked about for years. It's not happened by now, and I see no way that that's going to happen in the future. But I will be amazed if Ringo's not there. So there are only 2 people left on this planet, if you don't count Pete Best, who can generate a 50% Beatles reunion, and that's Paul and Ringo. And they obviously do it now and again, and it always generates some headlines, but if they do that as a Glastonbury headline slot, that's going to be just much bigger headlines and going to generate it as more of an event, really. So I will be very, very surprised if Ringo doesn't appear with Paul at Glastonbury next year. We also know that Paul loves to work with Dave Grohl, and Dave may well appear, but don't just do that. Take the opportunity to recreate Sirvana, that sort of mini Nirvana reunion from a few years ago. Get Dave Grohl, get Chris Novoselic, and get Pat Smear in and do Cut Me Some Slack, which was the song that they recorded together. So it was Nirvana minus Kurt Cobain with Paul on vocals. I think they should do that, and I think there's maybe a chance that that could happen. Again, the publicity that would generate if that happened. And bear in mind, it's quite a recent song as well, so it would have been recorded when Paul sang it really well on the record, and it may well be something that he can still sing pretty close to that and well. So I certainly see that as a possibility. And then there's a few other names I thought of people who might guest star with Paul. I think these are probably less likely, but it's worth mentioning them anyway. One that would be great for the fans, even if it wouldn't generate as much publicity, would be Elvis Costello. It would be great if they could do 1 or 2 songs from their collaborations from the late 80s and early 90s. That would be a real treat for fans, I think, if they could pick the right songs to do for that. Somebody else I'd like to see appear would be Dave Gilmour. But the songs that he's worked on with Paul are not necessarily ones that you would expect to see him do live. Certainly not these days or at all. So it's a possibility if they could find something, but getting the Pink Floyd legend on stage, that could be very interesting. And the last one, Stevie Wonder. I don't know whether Paul would take the gamble there, because Paul likes to tell the stories about Stevie's unreliable timekeeping, and I don't know if he'd trust him or not. But I mean, Paul doesn't do Ebony and Ivory, for example, live, but could he? Could he get Stevie there and they do that? I don't know. That could be interesting. So probably less likely, but you never know. And Mark Ronson. So Paul's worked with Mark Ronson a lot over the last few years. Mark's obviously a big name in the pop world. So could there be something that they could work up there? It's possible. I don't know. So there's a few names there of maybe less likely that he could use. So with those guest stars, I think there's definitely songs that Paul can use that are going to be suitable for his voice that he has these days for when that comes through the TV screen to the viewers at home. But the second thing that I think Paul should do, and I think I would really love it if he would do this, is to work with somebody in advance of Glastonbury when he's planning it, who's not afraid to stand up to him, who's not afraid to tell Paul something that he doesn't want to hear, who can work on a set or a portion of a set featuring songs that still sound the best for Paul live these days. So I'm not talking about songs like Maybe I'm Amazed or Jet or something like that, where he's just not got the voice to come through the TV speakers as well anymore. But work on songs that do sound better. And then when he's negotiating the TV rights for Glastonbury, because big artists like Paul can certainly do negotiations like this. The Rolling Stones did when they did their set recently. There was a very much smaller than normal portion of their set that was televised, and I'm absolutely sure that would have been completely under their control. If Paul can arrange for the section of the show that's broadcast live to be that part that is specifically suited to his current voice, then I think that could work. But he needs somebody who's going to be strict with him to say, Paul, no, don't do that song. That ain't going to work. And there's not many people around, I think, who will take that kind of message from Paul. And Paul probably isn't the best judge of these kind of things himself, in my opinion. But that's what I think he should do anyway, is get that core set of stuff that still sounds good with his voice, and then negotiate the TV rights around that particular portion of the set. And then that will help to tie in with all those things that I said in part one of this video, to try and get a show broadcast that he's not going to get absolutely slated for, because there is that potential. All you need to do is look at the tweets that the official Glastonbury account put out earlier this week, and Emily Evis, who's the main organiser now, where they announced Paul as the headliner, and the replies were not good. They were not favourable at all. And it's just a taste of what we're going to get next June if this isn't done correctly. So those are my thoughts anyway. As always, please let me know what you think, because I've enjoyed talking about this with some of you over the last few days, and I'm sure there'll be more comments to come. But thank you for listening, and I'll see you again sometime soon. Bye-bye.